I've been feeling really connected to what I like to call love lately. And I wanted to kind of share a video talking about this energy, this force that I intentionally use to guide my every action and every moment of every single day. This is not me acting like I have all the answers. I have zero answers. I don't know what the solution is right now. This is me just sharing my experience and what I feel in my heart, most importantly. I often share about love, about compassion, about kindness, about seeking to understand one another. I've spoken about this for many years as it's been a big part of my own spiritual journey and my own self-discovery journey and even my own self-love journey. I've realized that I have to be able to cultivate this love within myself in order to feel it for other people, other things, and for life in general. And so it kind of came as a shock to me, and I don't know why it was a shock. I should have expected it, but I've been sharing a lot more about love lately, just because there is so much hatred and violence and division happening, not just in the United States, but all across the entire world. And as just a human sitting here who has the privilege to be able to view all these things happening from the safety and comfort of my own home, I have a lot of feelings, a lot of sadness in my heart, and I feel like it's really overwhelming to be taking all these horrible things that are happening, taking them in what seems like every single day, if not in many different instances throughout each day. And I think social media and the internet has made this a lot more overwhelming for our nervous systems. And I don't think that we're supposed to be taking all this in all the time, and that's not bypassing what's happening. I think it's just something that we're trying to figure out as we go about this new digital age where we have access to all this information with the click of a button or the tap of a screen. And it just feels like it keeps getting more and more and more overwhelming. In some ways, the political climate in this country, in other ways, the violence and horrible things happening in this country and around the world, the wars, the suffering put onto fellow human beings by other human beings. It's really hard, and I don't want to make it seem like this is all about me and my feelings about it, because again, I have the privilege to be able to watch and view this from my own home, and I absolutely recognize that privilege, and at the same time, being someone who is witness to all of this also is a challenging experience in itself, and I think that there are other people who might be able to relate to that, and so I have felt called to share about love often, across all my social medias, and more importantly, like in my own life, letting that that love guide my actions. And so it kind of came as a shock to me when I shared a post about love and about how I really value peace and compassion and nonviolence where it's necessary to guide us into more action and more long-lasting solutions from what has been this perpetuating cycle of hate and violence and division all throughout history, looking back centuries ago. And so I was met with a lot of pushback about my stance on this, and for me, I believe that conversation and listening and seeking to understand one another is really, really important. And I wholeheartedly, honestly, could see everyone's perspective on this issue or this stance. And also at the same time, I think love is often misunderstood. And so that's most importantly what I want to talk about in this video today. When I speak about love, it's not like romantic love. That's one type of love, and it's an important type of love. But when I speak about love, I'm speaking about almost like this, and I don't want to use like esoteric language. I want to make this as grounded as possible, but it is almost like this vibration, this sort of frequency that if we tap into it, and we don't need anything to tap into it other than ourselves, if we can tap into it, we can feel it throughout everything in life. As I sit in this room and I meditated this morning and I connected to that love, and I can feel that sort of feeling within these plants that are behind the camera, within the two dogs that are on the bed, within the words coming out of my mouth. As I look outside, I can see it within the trees, within the sun, within the sky, and the mountains. It's more a very subtle, but if you know how to notice it, you can notice it, type of force. And I don't even know if force is the right word, because it is so free flowing throughout everything. And this is a feeling that we all have access to, not by getting it from someone else or something outside of us, but by connecting to it within ourselves. And a practice that I do pretty frequently to be able to connect to what I like to call love is meditation, and more specifically metta meditation, which is a type of Buddhist meditation focused on loving kindness, which is about love, compassion, understanding, empathy, kindness, all those sort of things. And if that's something that interests you, I definitely recommend looking more into it. I'm not going to share too much about that specifically in this video, but that's just one practice that I use to personally connect to this love that is always in my heart, but sometimes seems to get clouded. Sometimes I feel disconnected from it, because we're all human and we all have different emotions. We have different fears and worries and anxieties going on in our brains. We sometimes feel angry. We sometimes feel very upset, and all those things are real and valid and part of the human experience, but those things don't replace love. It's more often where they make it hard for us to notice the love that is always present all the time, within everything, within everyone. And so by finding those tools and ways to reconnect to that love that is always present, I think that can help start allowing us to notice where that love is. Notice it more in our day-to-day lives. And this kind of leads me to my next thing, which I think is probably the most important thing I want to say about love, is that love is not just ignoring. Love is, it's not even accepting. I think when I speak about love, especially when it relates to some of the things in our political climate and just within society, some people might think that by connecting to love, it means that we have to just allow what's happening to keep happening, and to allow the oppressed to keep getting oppressed, and it's allowing the oppressors to keep oppressing, and that's not at all what it is. In fact, it's completely the opposite. I've noticed a pattern, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's noticed this pattern, but there has been this cycle of hate for so long, the cycle of violence, and it's like there's one side, and then this side fights back, and then this side becomes the oppressed, and then the oppressed become the oppressed, and it keeps going. And it's not specifically a two-side issue. It's multifaceted, and that's just trying to simplify it down a little bit. And this just continues on for generations and generations. And I think that if we had the perfect solution, I wouldn't even need to be sitting here talking about this. And this isn't the perfect solution. This isn't even a solution I've come up with on my own. It's just been through reading different philosophical and spiritual texts, my own journey of connecting with that love within myself, but then also learning more about teachings by others who share a similar perspective as mine. And so love is not inaction, it's not allowance, it's not acceptance. Love is something that we can tap into, that we can use as an act of courage to meet whatever the situation is with as much compassion as possible. And so this could be something very small that might directly relate to our lives. Maybe there's someone in our lives who we're having difficulty with. Maybe we find them to not be the kindest of person. And it's really easy to judge them, to deem them as smaller than ourselves, to be angry with them. And again, all those things are completely real and valid, and we must feel those things. And then where love and compassion come in is not being okay with their behavior, but being curious about where their behavior is coming from. Why does that person feel the need to project so much hate? And again, not an excuse, but just slight curiosity. A feeling of just trying to understand a little bit better. And I think a lot of times what we'll notice, and if we continue doing this throughout our lives, and this is what I've noticed, is that for the most part, and I don't want to give 100% here because I think every situation is different, but a lot of times, for the most part, the people who act out in any form of hate or whatever it may be, anything that is disconnected from love, is because they're hurting inside. And again, I want to reiterate this and make it very clear that it's not an excuse for their behavior, their actions, or whatever it may be. But on your end, it's just you being a little bit curious about why they're doing that thing. And so maybe, for example, this person who you're having a lot of struggles with, who might be very difficult to work with and to understand, and to just maybe even be in the same room as, maybe they're really struggling with something and they might not necessarily even know that they're struggling with it, or they might know, but they might not have the tools or the resources or an understanding of self for them to be able to work through it. And I would say that it's up to them and it's their responsibility to figure that out and to work through it. But then from your end, and this is where our power comes in, because we can't control that other person, we have no control over them. We have control over ourselves, our actions, and our words. And so if we can connect to that love, even if it is just very, very, very small, we can at least, maybe not all the way, but slightly understand what's going on within that person, because we really have no idea what's going on inside anyone. And I would say that most people are struggling with things that we know absolutely nothing about and will never know about. But if we can understand that they might be struggling, and if we can feel just a little bit of empathy and a little bit of compassion for them, I think it's easier for us to not act out in a way that is against our own love, that goes against our own core values of being a good person. And again, let's make this very clear, because I know that there might still be some people who might not fully understand this. When we choose love, it's not being okay with whatever that challenging thing might be, whatever the thing that is disconnected from love might be. We're not bypassing that, and it is hard. It's really nuanced, because we have to hold both of these things. We have to have this understanding that we're not okay with this, and I can feel a little bit of compassion, or maybe not even compassion at this point. I might be able to feel a little bit of understanding for that person, why they are the way that they are. Doesn't mean we need to engage. We can set boundaries. We can not allow them into our lives if that's necessary. All those things are okay. And what if we do it from love instead of a place of perpetuating that hate back and forth, back and forth? And this is a much smaller scale. And for the, I guess, bigger things that are going on across the world right now, it can be hard because it does feel really hopeless. Me, as one person, how can I actually make a change? How can I stop this? I want to stop this, but I don't know how. And I feel so powerless. I think a lot of us feel this way just from what I read and see online, and I know I definitely feel that way also. And I think activism is important. I think speaking out is really important. Sharing our opinions is important. Even though there will be people who disagree. Listening to those people who disagree. And still sharing our opinions either way. And making sure that we're doing it from a place of love, from a place of mindfulness. And what I mean by that is just taking a moment to think and feel before instantly reacting. And in that split moment, might not even be a second, it might just be a split second, choosing a reaction that is based in love as opposed to being based in whatever that thing is that we are opposing. And I think that what we want to see out there a lot of times starts within ourselves. It starts within us choosing love in our day-to-day life. Simple, simple, simple things. Maybe just starting by sending someone some love. Not even physically interacting with them or communicating with them, but just taking a moment to be really intentional and like, I'm sending this person love. And it doesn't have to be someone you disagree with. It doesn't have to be someone you have struggles with. It could be someone who you can easily cultivate love for, and just starting there and sending them love and getting used to that feeling. And then maybe inviting the thought of someone who you have difficulty with and trying to send them a little bit of love, because you understand what it's like to have hardship, to have challenges. And then using that and turning it into grounded, realistic action that you can do in life. I believe there are multiple layers to this, and I think that there is something really powerful about just sending someone love. I mean, and this might be getting a little bit from an ungrounded approach, but I'll come back to the grounded approach. I'll come back to the grounded approach in a sec. But there's not really space between us. There's not space between you and I. I'm made up of energy. There's energy between us, and so if we're sending that intentional energy to someone else, I do believe that it does get to them, and maybe on a level that they might not be able to think about, but it can be felt even if it's very subtle. And that's one aspect, but then there's the more grounded and more practical in our lives action that we have to take. We can't just sit back and let these horrible things keep happening. And that's not at all what I mean when I say that we should connect to love. What I mean is that the action that we take, what if we take action that's grounded and rooted in mindfulness, in love, and compassion? Will that make a change? I don't know. I have no idea. Again, I don't have the answers. These are just questions that I want to ask. And something that I think about all the time. And then in our own lives, like, because we can't always change the big things, right? As much as we want to. In our own lives, what we can do is let that love lead us every single day. Saying something kind to someone. Holding the door open for someone. Smiling at someone. Listening to someone when they're having a hard time. Listening to someone even when you disagree with them. Seeking to understand what's behind their behavior, what's behind their actions, and feeling love for that, feeling compassion for that, feeling a slight understanding for that. Realizing that I'm imperfect, you're imperfect, we're all imperfect. I've made so many mistakes. And I understand that I too could be in that person's shoes. I'm one action away from being in that person's shoes, from doing the things that they're doing. Not an excuse for their behavior, but again, realizing just how similar we all are, and how a lot of times when people feel hatred, it's because they don't know how to connect to that love, or maybe they've never been exposed to that love. And I don't think that we can all be like saviors of these people and give them that love that they need. But I do believe in a domino effect when we do lead with love. Maybe that one person who you listened to today finally felt heard for the first time in 20 years. And because they finally felt heard for the first time in 20 years, they feel a little bit more open and a little bit more capacity to maybe tomorrow not be as cranky to someone who they're usually cranky with. And then that person who received less crankiness from that person is like, that didn't make me feel as bad as it usually does. Now I have a little bit more capacity for whatever, you know what I'm saying? It creates this ripple effect. And I think that we have to start small when we do feel so hopeless and when we don't have the exact answers on what to do. There is so much love that exists in this world, and it can be really hard to believe it and to even tap into it, especially considering there are a lot of, I guess, bad things happening in the world too. And so these are just my thoughts. Again, I don't have the answers. I wish I could sit here and say that love is the best thing that we can do all the time. But I can't, because I don't know if that's true. But what I do know is that it feels right for me to lead my life that way. And of course, I'm going to continue speaking on it. But I think more importantly, letting my actions show it, and doing so silently without the recognition or without the needing to share it on a larger platform. But I think it's important for me also, because I have a platform, it's important for me to speak on it, just to invite those who might be more interested in leading a life or living a life that is led by love and compassion, that it's possible, that it's an option, and it's a choice that we all have. Not saying it's the right way. I don't know if I don't know if this is the right way. If anyone had the answers, I don't think that the world would be in the place that it's in right now. But I think that it's one way, one practical thing that we can do right now when we do feel so hopeless. So if you made it to the end of this video, I'm sure you have some sort of thought about this. I'm here to listen. Maybe you disagree with me. That's perfectly fine. That's okay. Maybe you do agree with me and you want to find more ways to live a life of love. So just kind of think about the things that I spoke about, that I asked about in this video, and if it feels in alignment to you, that's awesome, and find some ways to integrate that. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. This is my first time being human. I'm trying to figure this out as I go.